once again, welcome to this third in the series of talks on the Maṅgala Sutta with a theme of well-being and happiness in life. For those who have been following the first two parts, I think I'll just do a quick recap. As you know, the Maṅgala Sutta, there are 10 verses on blessings, but the actual Sutta itself, you look, there'll be 12 verses with one introduction and one conclusion. So altogether 12 verses, but in 10 verses of blessings. So what we have done is, if you recall, part one, we have actually covered the two of the verses, which actually comprises 6 blessings, where we started with the orientation, cultivating the conditions for discretion, where we talk about the blessing of not to associate with the foolish, to associate with the wise, and to venerate or to honor those worthy of honor. And we also continue by talking about 3 other blessings, which actually provide us or establish a secure foundation for both inner and outer requisites for success in life, where we talk about dwelling in a suitable locality, or having done merits in the past, and of course to continue to do merits in the present, and to set ourselves on the right course, right, the right resolution. So that was part one, because I also covered some brief explanation of what constitutes both internal blessings as well as external blessings. Then we move on to part two, which was extensive for 15 blessings, where we covered both the 4 blessings about preparation, training oneself for success in life. If you recall, we talk about a well-rounded education or abundant learning, or bahusacha, as is mentioned in the scriptures, learning a craft or profession, and then having a code of discipline that is well-trained, as well as well-spoken speech. So the speech part becomes very important. At the same time, we also talk about the other blessings which will help us to lead a virtuous life in this world, about fulfilling family responsibilities, all right? So here you find that the Buddha was very explicit about what, as a lay follower of the Buddha, we should do. There are 3 blessings here, if you recall. The Buddha talks about supporting one's parents, one's mother and father, mata pitu upatana, all right? The Buddha talks about that. At the same time, the Buddha also talks about maintaining or supporting one's, well, in the scripture it's talking about one's wife, but then we could say one's husband, right? Maintaining a spouse and children, taking care of the family, and very important, because lay people earn a living, so to have a harmless occupation, all right? Then we continued on verses 5 and 6. So verses 5, we talk about becoming a pillar of society. We talk about generosity, about doing dana, and I think we explained a little bit about the difference between dana and chaga. Then we talk about dutiful conduct, having righteous conduct, helping our relatives and friends, all right? Because of our karmic connections, so we have relatives, we also have friends. So how do we help our relatives and friends? And to be able to perform what is called blameless action. So that constitutes another 4 blessings where we become a pillar of society. Then we also talk about personal ethics, how we live a life of moral integrity. And I think you recall last session, we talked about 4 blessings here, one of which is to cease from evil, avoid evil, to do good, to purify the mind, ceasing from evil, abstaining from intoxicating drinks, all right? This morning, all of us recited the 5 precepts, and the 5th of the 5 precepts actually talks about abstaining from intoxicating drinks. And likewise, the last session, I also mentioned about many other discourses. I think I made reference to the Parabhava Sutta, where the Buddha talks about one's downfall. And then I also make reference to the Sigalovada Sutta, where the Buddha talks about the importance of avoiding intoxicating drinks. And the last blessing in a previous session was to talk about diligence in wholesome practices, to strive on with diligence. And that being the very last word that the Buddha gave us just before he passed away into Mahaparinibana. So we have covered so far, 21 blessings, all right? So there are 38 blessings, so we've got 17 more blessings to go, all right? And as I mentioned early on, it'll be quite impossible to go into details for each of the important blessings. So what I've done is, while just making reference to each of the blessing, is to give you references from the suttas where you could subsequently make your own reading and then further reflection and contemplation. I think that's the best way to really benefit from not just this Dhamma talk, but any other Dhamma talks, because there's only so much that a person could share with you during a 2 hour or a 1.5 hour talk. But subsequently, I hope all of you would make the effort to make reference to the sources that's been given in each of my slides, so that you will continue to benefit from the teachings of the Buddha in your study and practice. All right. So for today, I'm going to look at, as I said, 17 blessings. Let me just take you through some of the slides. Okay, let me see if I can open my slides. Okay. So I think I will just skip this. I've already mentioned that the Maṅgala Sutta is, all right, where is it found? Okay. So group of blessings. So today we are going to cover the higher blessings and the supreme blessings, so which will be blessing 22 and blessing up to 38. All right. So we have covered essential blessings, supporting blessings, personal blessings. So today let's look at higher blessings and supreme blessings. All right. So what are these higher blessings that the Buddha talks about? So there are 5 here. Respect, humility, to be contented, gratitude, and listen to the Dhamma. So as you can see, each of these is actually a topic for a Dhamma talk. All right. So it will be quite impossible to actually go into detail. But nevertheless, let's look at each one of it, because I think they're important. At least we remember the importance of respect. So the verse here from is to be respectful and humble, to be contented and grateful, and listening to the Dharma. So this constitutes blessings 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. All right, so this in verse 7. So let's look at being respectful. What does it mean here? Now, again, I could spend 15 minutes talking to you about what is respect. I think all of you know. So I think what is important is for you on your own to know where did the Buddha give further discussions about this topic. And there are 2 discourses here which are very useful. And I've just mentioned them. One is called Garava Sutta. Garava itself means respect, where in this sutta, the Buddha says respect is a requisite condition for gaining knowledge and skill, for it creates the atmosphere for learning to occur. One suffers if one lives without reverence. So here, you find that if one does not have respect, then it's very difficult for us to gain knowledge and skill. For example, one of the respect we have will be respect for our teachers. If we don't respect our teachers, there's no way that we could learn anything from our teachers. Likewise, respect for the Dharma. If we don't have respect for the Dharma, we are always doubtful about what the Buddha actually taught, then it's going to make it very difficult. Why? Because it would not create the right conditions or the right atmosphere for learning to occur. As we all know, even in secular learning, for learning to be effective, the conditions needs to be there. So you can see in the Garava Sutta, the Buddha talks about how important it is that we must create the right conditions for learning to occur. All right. So likewise, when you listen to a Dhamma talk in particular, you must always ask yourself, what is the motivation that I'm here to listen to the Dhamma talk? So that you create the right mental conditions when you listen to a Dhamma talk. Okay. So anyway, for details, please make reference to the Garava Sutta, which is in the Samyutta Nikaya. Now, the other one is in the Panya Sutta, which is in the Anguttara Nikaya. So there are 8 things here, but I've just selected the first one. And here it says the first prerequisite of the holy life is living in apprenticeship to a teacher. One has strong respect, as this attitude opens the heart to learn from others. So it is quite similar, again, for us to be able to learn, able to benefit from the teachings of the Buddha. First thing we need to do is to learn from our teachers. Be an apprentice, all right, to a teacher who has strong respect. I think I mentioned early on that in some traditions, like if you study the Lamrim, there's even a whole section about how do you relate to a spiritual teacher. All right, so you could also get some good tips on how do you identify a teacher. And once you've identified a teacher, how do you benefit from learning from that teacher? All right. So, but very important here from the Panya Sutta is that we must have the right attitude. All right, because the right attitude will help to open the heart to learn from others. I think you all remember that in the Buddha's teachings, we always talk about the gradual path. We talk about study, practice, realize. All right. So we need to start our spiritual journey with the study of the teachings, and then we put it into practice, and then we will be able to realize what has been said. So all this, of course, requires us to have respect. So there's a lot that we could say about respect, but I think what is important is if you could just get hold of these two discourses, study it, reflect on it, contemplate on it, and then see how you could put it into practice. Okay, so that's the first one, respect. Okay, so I think I have to go on because we've got 17 blessings. All right, so it'd be quite impossible to cover all the details. Okay, the next one. So humility is called nivato. I think humility is something that is so important. It has a lot to do with, for example, our ego. How do we try to reduce that ego of ours? I've always been inspired by one of these phrases from the 37 Practices of Bodhisattva. I think this translation is by Ken MacLeod, if I'm not mistaken, where it is said, even when you are famous, honored by all, and as rich as the God of wealth himself, know that success in the world is ephemeral, is impermanent, is subject to change, and don't let it go to your head. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. Okay? So we can use this word bodhisattva in a very general sense, that anyone who is aspiring to follow the qualities of the Buddha, yes, in that sense, in that very general sense, we are all the bodhisattvas. Okay? This morning, we recited the 9 virtues of the Buddha, we recited the 6 qualities of the Dharma, and we also recited the 9 characteristics of the Sangha. Okay? So when we recite all these things, all right, it actually also tells us that when we practice all these things, if we practice the Dhamma by itself, then naturally humility will come. So today, if we are very famous, we are well known, all right, and many people honor us, many people know us, we are wealthy, all right. Just remember, all these things is transient. They do not last. Now, if we can have that attitude of mind, then we will have a very humble attitude in life. And humility is something that will take us far in our spiritual practice. Interestingly enough, even in leadership, all right, the concept of humility, for example, is also regarded as one of the key aspects. All right, for one to be an effective leader, all right, one of the quality is to have humility. All right, so we can talk about that later if we have time. Now, the other one is contentment. Now, what is contentment? The Pali word is santuti, one of the blessings. So it is a feeling that you are happy with who you are and what you have. Example, the material acquisitions that you have. Is a mental attitude that realizes external things can indeed make us happy and content, but only for a while. So just as, for example, the earlier blessing about being humble, where we are always constantly reminding ourselves that everything in existence is subject to change. So we are always reminded of the 3 characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, or dukkha, and non-self. So contentment is a mental attitude which allows us to realize that external things that can indeed make us happy and content. So in the Buddha's teachings, we are not denying that external things. For example, prosperity, wealth, all this can make us happy. In fact, as I mentioned early on, the Buddha even gave some teachings, some discourses on how we can be happy with the money that we accumulate. All right, that's one very interesting sutta called the Adiya Sutta, where the Buddha actually talks about how with wealth we can be happy. At the same time, he also tells us that, yes, wealth, all these external things, they make us happy, make us contented, but how long can we be happy? How long? So it's only for a while, because they can never completely quench our insatiable craving for more power, for more wealth, for more possessions. So it's an endless craving here that we have to be careful with. So that is contentment, all right? So it's called santuti. Now, to practice contentment, gratitude is one of the tools that one could develop. In Pali, it's called katanyutta, where it is said, how do we, where it is talks about being thankful for what you have, not what you lack. So many a time, we like to think what we do not have. We always forget what we have. All right. So we're thankful for what we have, not what we lack. All right. If you lack something and you need it, go and get it. All right. Earn a righteous living and get what you need. There's nothing wrong with that from the Buddhist point of view. As you recall in the previous discourses, in the Dikajanu Sutta, the Buddha talks about earn your living through righteous means. All right. And if you accrue a lot of wealth, a lot of possessions through righteous means, that's fine. So be thankful for what you have, not what you lack. And secondly, be thankful you don't need to go hungry. I think the fact that all of us here are able to spend a Sunday morning listening to a Dhamma talk tells us that actually we don't really need to worry that the next hour we may not have the means to actually go have our next meal. So be thankful for that. We don't need to go hungry. If you read the news, if you watch the news, in the world, many people actually go hungry. They really don't have food to eat. But I think we are not in that situation. So we can be contented by being grateful for that. And also be thankful for the friends that you have. All right. Of course, one of the blessings, all right, the first blessing is not to associate with the foolish, but to associate with the wise. So whatever friends that we have, all right, then we are thankful for the friends that we have. And I think I also mentioned in the first session that sometimes we should not only think of the good friends that we have, we should also ask ourselves, are we behaving like a good friend to others? So it should also operate in that manner. So it's not only the friends out there, but you as a sentient being, are you a good friend to others? And be thankful you have a home to sleep, you have a shelter, all right? And be thankful you are breathing. We are all alive. And in many of the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha also talks about the preciousness of a human life, right? And it is said that it is so difficult to be born as a human being. Okay, so to be born as a human being is itself a blessing. It's a great blessing. All right, so we must be thankful that we are breathing. So if we have that right attitude of being thankful for what we have, rather than what we don't have, then I think we will lead a life of contentment. But here, of course, as I mentioned when we talk about the slight and contentment doesn't mean that, we just become lazy, we don't do anything, we just, lie in a sofa, watch TV, and then say, I'm not, I don't want to do anything, I just want to be contented. So that's not the meaning of contentment. Contentment means whatever you need to do, you do it, but put in the right effort, but do it in a righteous way, in an ethical way that doesn't harm yourself, that doesn't harm others. So the basis of a wholesome action is when whatever you do, whether you earn a living or whatever action that you do, all right, it should be something that does not cause harm to yourself, does not cause harm to others, but brings happiness to yourself, bring happiness to others. So those are some of the criteria the Buddha talks about in terms of what constitutes a good action. So with those good actions, we can strive on diligently. Okay, so as you can see, all of the Buddha's teachings, they are actually interrelated. Now, the other one is called listening to Dharma, which is itself a blessing. So if you have been practicing the Dhamma, then you realize that you can only practice the Dhamma if you know what the Dhamma is all about. All right. If someone asks you to practice the 5 precepts, I think it is very important to understand why you practice the 5 precepts. While practicing is important, listening to or understanding is very important. And in the Dhamma-inspired Sutta, you can find this in the book of 5, the book of gradual sayings, the Buddha talks about 5 rewards in listening to the Dhamma. And what are these 5? It is said one hears what one has not heard before. All right? So the Dhamma is something that you will hear, because the Dhamma is said to be something that goes against the stream. It doesn't flow with what we would naturally want to do in life. So then you hear what one has not heard before. Maybe it gives you a kind of a new paradigm shift in the way you look at things. Yeah. For example, we like to think that the happiness that we have is going to be permanent. The friends that we have is going to be permanent. But in reality, all right, the Dhamma will tell you, while friends are important, while wealth is important, but they are not here to stay. They are not permanent. So you hear something that you have not heard before. All right. One clarifies what one has heard before. And if you have heard something about that, you need to clarify. As I said, because the Buddha taught for 45 years, so he has left us many teachings. And sometimes if we read the teachings selectively, we become very biased, we become very narrow-minded. I've heard people say, the only way one can practice the Dhamma, some even say, especially Theravada Dhamma, is that one becomes a monk. There's no way you can practice if you remain as a lay person. So if that's the case, then where does all these discourses that the Buddha gave to lay people comes in? Discourses like the Maṅgala Sutta, for example, which is obviously given to lay people, the Parabhava Sutta, the Sigalovada Sutta, right? So many, the Buddha gives so many discourses for lay people. So, but if you read the teachings only selectively, then you get the impression that, oh, the teaching is only for one category of people. It's not the case. If you read Venerable Narada's book, The Buddha and His Teachings, he used an expression that if one really studies the Dhamma, there is milk for the babe, there's milk for the baby, and there is meat for the adult. Of course, maybe we shouldn't use the word meat if you're, well, fake meat then, okay, if you're a vegetarian. Right? So what it basically means is that the Dhamma is something that has relevance for all levels of society. Okay, so you clarify what one you have heard before. Okay, and then you get rid of doubt. Doubt is something we all have. Initially, it is good to doubt because doubt will help us to build up our intellect. Okay, but we have to know when our doubt become what is called skeptical doubt. Okay, and one's views are made straight. In fact, in the Saleyaka Sutta, the Buddha says one of the 10 wholesome actions is straightening one's views. So one's views are made straight. Okay, so that's very important to develop right views. So as you would recall in the Noble Eightfold Path, the first 2 aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path will be right views and right thoughts. So views are very important. And the last one is one's mind grows serene. One's mind grows calm. Whenever I have got any problems, or even I feel very down, and through my practice, and I find that all I need to do is pick up a Dhamma book, read a particular inspiring phrase from either the Dhammapada or from the Anguttara Nikaya, and then then you rethink. You have a different way of looking at things. Right? So there are many things that you can benefit by listening to the Dhamma. So for details, please read the Dhamma-savana Sutta, which is found in Book of 5. So I'll move on now to higher blessings. Okay, so in the higher blessings, there are four topics here. Again, they are big topics of patience, about being open to criticism, sight of a true monk, and then Dhamma discussions. Early on, we talked about listening to the Dhamma. So I suppose listening is not good enough. We need to also discuss. We'll come to that. So let's look at patience. Now, so this is blessing 27, 28, 29, and 30. So patience and easy to admonish, sight of true monastics, and discussing the Dharma. Okay, so let's pick on each one of them. Patience. Now, what is patience? Patience, the Pali word is kanti. All right. Those of you who reads or who studies in the other tradition, which uses Sanskrit, so you may be more familiar with the word santi. So in Sanskrit, the word patience is shanti. So sometimes in Sanskrit, you hear the word shanti. So what is patience? This is the ability to abide with things the way they are. It allows you to tolerate failure, disappointment, defeat, unpleasantness, and confusion without giving up. Now, this is a very important word here, without giving up. So patience doesn't mean that you just let things be as they are. All right, here is the ability to abide with things as they are. It allows you to tolerate failure, disappointment, defeat, unpleasantness, and confusion, but you do not give up, both on the meditation cushion and in life. Now, what this means is that, for example, patience in our practice when we sit and do meditation, initially it's going to be difficult. We may not be able to focus well on our objects of meditation. We must have patience, continue, be persistent in it. Likewise in life, okay? Patience means that if you have failed, you never give up, you continue. You may have met with disappointments, you do not give up. So the key word is you do not give up. So patience is also forbearance under stress. In other words, the capacity to endure. We start by having patience with ourselves, then with others. All right? Of course, there are different levels of patience. All right, patience with, for example, like now I'm giving this Dhamma talk. I'm sure you can hear in the background. My neighbor's dogs are making noise. Well, you're right. I wish that the dogs are not so noisy, but then, well, we've got to have patience. Right, but I don't give up. So now I've moved to a different corner of the house where I think the noise is less. All right, but maybe it's still there. So we never give up. We try to find alternatives. We try to find different ways how we can solve whatever problems that we have. Okay. So here we start by having patience with ourselves and then with others. One of the most inspiring, one of the highest type of patience that I've read, I've come across, is the story of this Tibetan monk who was imprisoned in Tibet for many years. Subsequently, he was released, and when he was released, he gave an interview to the New York Times, and the reporters asked him, "When you were in prison, what was your biggest fear?" And the monk said, "When I was in prison, I endured a lot of torture, a lot of beating. My biggest fear was that I lost my patience, that I will lose my compassion for my torturers." All right. So that is that level of patience that a person can have. Yeah. So in the Bodhisattva Chariot by Shantideva, there are two paragraphs here which I think tells you the importance of how patience is actually an antidote for anger. It says that, I'll just read to you two verses here. He said, "Good works gathered in 1,000 ages or in 1,000 years, such as deeds of generosity or offerings to the blissful ones." The blissful ones will be the Buddhas, or making offerings to the enlightened ones. "A single flash of anger shatters them. No evil is there similar to hatred, no austerity to be compared with patience. Steep yourself, therefore, in patience, in all ways, urgently, with zeal." So patience is the antidote for anger. And patience is very, very important for us, especially if you have a lot of anger. All right, try to develop or cultivate patience. And one way is read this wonderful text by Shantideva called the Bodhisattva Chariot, where there's a whole chapter on patience and anger. Now, the next blessing is called easy to admonish. I think the Pali word is Sova Chasata. And there are actually a couple of discourses where the Buddha actually went into great details about what is meant by easy to admonish. And one of it is the Maṅgala Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. number 15. So I would again strongly recommend you to read this discourse here. Okay, let me just quote this paragraph which I've extracted from this discourse. Friends, though a monk, asked us, let the venerable ones admonish me. I need to be admonished by the venerable ones. Yet, if he is difficult to admonish and possesses qualities that make him difficult to admonish, if he is impatient, he doesn't have patience, and does not take instruction rightly, then his companions in the holy life think that he should not be admonished or instructed. They think of him as a person not to be trusted. So in this paragraph itself, what is interesting is that you will find the qualities of blessings which I've just mentioned early on about patience. You see the word if he's impatient. So the opposite of patience. He does not take instruction rightly. In the earliest slide in the Garova Sutta and the Panya Sutta, I mentioned about the importance of taking instruction rightly, having the right attitude to be able to learn. And then his companions in the holy life, in others, our spiritual friends in the holy life, would think that we are not one who will easily be instructed. Okay? And because of that, then this person cannot be trusted. So you lose trust in all this. So it is important for us to always be patient, to take instruction, to listen to other people who want to tell us what our faults and shortcomings. All right. So details are actually in the Anuma Sutta. It's a very interesting discourse. So I hope you'll be able to read that. There's another discourse called the Kakachupama Sutta, or sometimes called the parable of the saw, SAW, a saw. So it says here that a monk may be gentle, mild-mannered, calm, as long as he is not touched by disagreeable aspects of speech. But it is only when disagreeable aspects of speech touch him that he can truly be known as gentle, mild-tempered, and calm. One can then know if he is easy to admonish. So what does this mean here? Is that if everything is going your way, if everybody that you meet are very nice to you, say good things about you, then the conditions for you to get angry doesn't arise. Conditions for you to say disagreeable speech or conditions for you to say something that is hurtful to others doesn't arise. But when things don't go your way, when people say things that you do not like to hear, how do you react? This is when one can truly know if one is easy to admonish. So here in the Kakachupama Sutta, the Buddha says, a monk should make himself easy to admonish out of esteem for the Dhamma, respect for the Dhamma, reverence for the Dhamma. So if you truly want to practice the Dhamma, you're always happy to allow people to point out what your shortcomings are. So that you know, if indeed they are your shortcomings, you will make effort to improve it. But if they are not your shortcomings, but it is not true, then you can rest assured that what has been mentioned to you is not true. Okay? So a monk here does not necessarily mean that this applies only to a monk. I think even lay people, this is a good advice. So we can use this as a good instruction even for lay people itself. All right. So details again are in the Kakachupama Sutta. So in the Maṅgala Sutta, the Buddha only mentioned one verse. All right, easy to admonish. But then for the details, all right, that is why I think you can find if you read all these subsequent teachings. So it is called easy to admonish. Now, the next blessing is that the true monastics. The word used is samana, right? In Sanskrit, it's called shramana, right? So samana. Now, who are these samanas? Now, just a little background. During the Buddha's time, you find that you got the Brahmins, right? The Brahmins, and then together with the Brahmins, you got the Vaishyas, you got the Kshatriyas, you have got the Sudras. So you have got the caste system. Now, during the Buddha's time, or even just before the Buddha arose in India, there was this group of wandering ascetics. So they are called samanas. So the samanas, they are in a way they have rebelled against the Brahmins, the Brahmin caste systems. All right. So they consider themselves as not part of the caste system. All right. Even though they may have come from different aspects of the caste systems. But in the Dhammapada verse 265, the Buddha uses word samana as someone who has pacified unwholesome actions or evil. He's called a samana. So when the Buddha started teaching, he uses the word samana to also refer to Buddhist monastic. All right. So sometimes you find the Buddha himself is described as the Gautama Samana, or the Samana Gautama. Gautama as in Pali, or Gautama in Sanskrit. So sometimes we use the word Samana to refer to the Buddha himself. All right. So the Buddha was a Samana. But in this context here, a Samana refers to a Buddhist monastic. Now, a Buddhist monastic, then when you talk about Buddhist monastic, then the word Sangha comes into play. So there's two slightly different words. So a Samana is also a member of the Sangha. But Sangha has two levels of meaning, the noble Sangha and the monastic Sangha. Now, this morning you recited the 9 characteristics of the Sangha. So that is what we call the Ariya Sangha, the noble Sangha. Right? Those are the awakened disciples, those who have attained to, for example, at least the first stage of enlightenment. It could be a Sotapan, for example. So which means in the noble Sangha, in the Ariya Sangha, they can include the fourfold assembly. It could include monks, nuns, male lay disciples, and female lay disciples, as long as they have attained to this particular Sangha, the Ariya Sangha. Now, the other aspects of Sangha will be the monastic Sangha. Now, this will be your conventional monks and nuns, what is called the Samuti Sangha. Samuti as in conventional, right? So you have two levels. Now, why is this considered a blessing, the seeing of a monastic? This is a kind of a feeling of inspiration, a feeling of of calmness. You know, when you are in the presence of a monastic. When I look back at my own life itself, having studied the Dhamma, having practiced the Dhamma, when I have the opportunity to be in the presence of a monastic that I truly respect, like for example my first teacher, venerable Dhamma Banchanwood. When I first met him, and I spent easily 3 to 4 years, all right, seeing him on a very regular basis. So in his presence, you feel a sense of calmness, a feel of sense of lightness, all right, and of course, subsequently with the late Venerable Kesari Dhammananda, whenever I've got any issue, I got any problem, I remember always going to him. And sometimes when I see him, I don't even ask him. I don't even ask him for a solution to my problem. Just by being in his presence already give me that kind of happiness and lightness, that I feel happy after that. And I said, thank you, Bhante, And of course, the third occasion which I always treasure, which I always remember, be in the presence of a true monastic or a true samana, is when I had the opportunity a few years ago to be to meet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Originally, we were supposed to only have 20 minutes of his time, because he is very busy and he got many students that he needs to meet and talks to give. But we actually had a half a day, a whole morning with him, and I even had the opportunity to interview him. So it was a wonderful experience to be able to be with him. So that was really, really wonderful. So it's not just the sight of a monastic, but I think it's the presence of a monastic. So those of you who have got teachers, you have your sayadaw, you have your achan or your bante, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. Sometimes just being in the presence itself, you feel that sense of lightness in your body and in your mind. Okay, so I think here is a blessing itself, right? So the samana nancha, true monastics. Now here here it says that Dhamma discussion. Now, I've got this extract from the Vibhanga. It says that the purpose of Dhamma discussions is towards right view, which I think is very important. That involves learning from teachers and spiritual friends, paratogosha, through wise reflections. I think this is another word that some of you are familiar with, yoniso manasikara. In the Sabha Sutta, the Buddha explains what is the benefits of wise reflection. So you can make reference to the Sabha Sutta. Now, these result in two types of initial wisdom acquired through listening and reasoning. This will then lead to experiential wisdom gained through meditation. So in Buddhist teachings, we said that wisdom or inner knowledge, true knowledge, can be acquired through three levels. So the first level, or the first initial level, is acquired through listening, or today we would say reading. During the Buddha's time, there were no written text, so people listened. So one way that one could learn is through listening to the Dhamma. So it's called Sutta Maya Panya. Now, whatever we have listened, we have heard, or we have read, we must always reflect on it. We must think about it. We must contemplate on it. So if we do that analytically, then we develop what is called Cinta Maya Panya. It's a second stage, second level of wisdom. This is wisdom acquired through reasoning. But that's not good enough. While it is good, it's still not good enough. We will have to cultivate inner wisdom or experiential wisdom, which can only gain through meditation. So that is why meditation is so important here. All right, Bhavana Maya Panya. So through Dhamma discussions or Dhamma Sakacha, as mentioned in the Vibhanga, so it talks about the three levels of wisdom. And very important thing, whatever we do, wise reflection. So this topic of wise reflection is also a very important topic in Buddhism. So if there's an opportunity, we can discuss about how we can talk about how we can do wise reflection. In the meantime, make reference to this course which the Buddha gave called Sabha Sutta, about wise reflection. Now, I'm going to go to the next four, which is on self-control, live a noble life, realize noble truth, and attain Nibana. Self-control, live the holy life, realize the noble truth, attain enlightenment. So self-restraint. Now, again, the word is tapo or tapas. So don't confuse this tapas with the Spanish small plates. So this is not the tapas we're talking about. So self-restraint, when you talk about self-restraint, you are basically talking about restraining our senses, all right? And in Buddhism, we not only talk about five senses, we use the mind as the sixth of our six senses. So we restrain our six senses through our actions, through our speech, and our thoughts. For example, we forego certain pleasures that tempt us to give in to desires. We need to develop a strong sense of priorities and be willing to say no to the currents that would lead to less worthwhile pleasures. So if you see a greater pleasure that comes from forsaking a lesser pleasure, be willing to forsake that lesser pleasure for the greater one. A lot can be said about this, all right? So the only way I can do justice is to request you again to read this discourse called the Adiya Sutta, which is found in the book of Gradual Sayings. So in this discourse itself, it talks about how do you do self-restraint through your six senses. Okay? Because of time, I'm going to skip the details. I'm going to move on to the next one, holy life. Now, what is meant by holy life? Again, there's so much we can talk about. So details are in the Brahmacharya Sutta. The Pali word is Brahmacharya from the word Brahma. Charya. Charya will be the way or the conduct. Right? So the conduct of Brahma. Now in the Brahmacharya Sutta, in the book of 4, the Buddha says, this spiritual life is not lived for the sake of deceiving people and cajoling them, nor for the benefit of gain, honor, and praise, nor for the benefit of winning in debates, nor with the thought, let the people know me thus, because to create your arrogance. But rather the spiritual life is lived for the sake of restraint, abandoning, dispassion, and cessation. Cessation of dukkha, cessation of suffering. Okay, restraint, abandoning, dispassion, and cessation. So these are the various techniques, the various path that one takes in one's spiritual practice. So restraint, earlier on we talked about on the topic of tapo, right? So in the Brahmacharya, you find more details on this. Now the C noble truths, Ariya Sachana Dasanam. So as you know, the word Ariya means truth. Now the key is the truths that are ennobling. Why is it called a noble truth? There are many things which is true. All right, if I ask you, is it raining now? Yes, it is raining. That is true. But is that a noble truth? Not necessarily the case. It is true, but not necessarily a noble truth. It is noble because they bring ordinary people to a noble attainment of true happiness. The truths are also of the nobles. Now, who are these nobles? In Pali, we use the word Ariya. They are the awakened ones who have proven that these truths, that they are the most important truths to teach to others for their well-being and happiness. It is said of the Buddha, of the Buddha and his teachings. If you were to summarize what the Buddha taught, it can be summarized in just 2 lines. Dukkha and the end of dukkha. In other words, suffering and the end of suffering. In other words, happiness, true happiness. All right? So to teach others for the well-being and happiness. But then what the Buddha discovered with his awakening was plentiful. So what the Buddha discovered was plenty. Like the leaves in the forest, what he taught, the 4 noble truths, is only a handful of leaves. So what is important for us is actually a handful of leaves. Well, this saying, a handful of leaves, you can find in the Singsapa Sutta. Now, the Buddha was not interested to talk about things which has got no direct relevance to our spiritual life. There was one occasion where a monk by the name of Malunkya Putta. So Malunkya Putta wanted to ask the Buddha a lot of what today we would call metaphysical questions. And the Buddha rejected all this and told Malunkya Putta that, look, all those things have got no relevance. They are not relevant. It is like if that a person has been shot by a poison arrow. If you are shot by a poison arrow, what is the first thing you need to do? Pull out that arrow and not to ask, who shot me? Is the person who shot me, is it tall? Is it short? Is it fair? Is it dark? Is it from the north? Is it from the south? Is it Chinese? Is it Indian? Is it Malay? So by the time you have answers to all those questions, the poison would have taken effect and you would have died. So you see, the Buddha was very practical. He was only interested to teach us that handful of leaves that he has discovered, which is mentioned in the Singsapa Sutta. So in his discourse to Malunkya, which you can read in the Chula Malunkya Putta Sutta, the Buddha talks about the importance of seeing the noble truth. All right, those are the noble truths because those noble truths will help us to reach happiness and well-being. Okay, so the next one, the Buddha talks about Nibana. Again, how could I talk to you about Nibana when I've not even experienced Nibana, right? So I'm not going to talk to you about Nibana. I'm just going to introduce you to, one is a very short article. It's actually published as a little book called Nibana for Everyone. And the other one is a very thick anthology of the Buddha's teachings on Nibana, compiled by Ajahn Pashanu and Ajahn Amaro. So you can pick your choice, but I highly recommend you pick the first one, Nibana for Everyone, which is actually I've just summarized here. It says, what is Nibbana? If you think of Nibbana as something you can only experience when you die, then you will never be serious in your practice because you think that's something that, that's too far away. But Ajahn Buddhadasa in his book or in his little article called Nibana for Everyone, he says, no. Nibbana is not something that you aspire to only when you are dead and gone. Nibbana is something you can experience here and now. For example, he says, this you can find in page 3 and 6, it is the coolness remaining when the defilements of greed, anger, fear, delusion have ended. Whenever there is freedom from defilement, that is the value and meaning Nibbana. When you're in a moment of happiness, when you don't have anger in your mind, when you don't have fear, when you don't have greed, in that short moments, in that small moments, you are in that moment of Nibbana. But unfortunately, those moments do not stay. Those moments do not last. So Buddhist practice is how to make those moments of true happiness, those moments of non-greed, non-fear, non-delusion, but kindness, compassion, equanimity, rejoicing in others' happiness. How do we make those moments, those qualities stay much, much longer than they normally would stay? You can do that when you're in those moments, you experience that coolness. So you are in the state of Nibbana. But that Nibbana is not the final. It's not final in the sense that it is momentary. It comes and it goes. Okay? So this coolness of heart and peace of mind that everyone desires is the meaning of Nibbana. Okay? So I think Ajahn Buddhadasa has given us a very practical, down-to-earth definition of what Nibbana is all about. Okay? So please read this little article. It's a very short article. It will not take you more than 30 minutes, but a lot of wisdom in it. Now, then I've also extracted this from this thick book by Ajahn Amaro, who incidentally is going to give an online retreat, right, in Bucks. Now, in this book called The Island, Nibbana is what Ajahn Amaro says on page 25. He said, Nibbana is a word that is used to describe an experience. So it's very similar to what Ajahn Buddhadasa talks about in my earlier slide. So when the heart is free of all obscurations and is utterly in accord with nature, ultimate reality, it represents perfect peace, joy, and contentment. So this is set of qualities. This set of qualities is what Nibbana describes. So Nibbana can be described in very positive terms. So when you're actually doing your loving kindness meditation and you feel a sense of peace, a sense of happiness, a sense of compassion for all sentient beings, at that moment you are in a state of Nibbana. Right? So as I said, the challenge is how do we make that state more lasting, longer than what it normally would be. Okay, so should we talk about Nibbana? Well, Ajahn Amaro actually interestingly gave a Dhamma talk at Ajahn Buddhadasa's group in Bangkok called BIA. So in that, the topic of Ajahn Amaro's talk is called, yes, we should talk about Nibbana. Right? So in other words, he's trying to say that Nibbana is not something you imagine after you're dead and gone. Nibbana is something that we want to practice and we want to experience. Right? I think in the words of Joseph Goldstein, the Vipassana teacher, is that we have moments of Nibbana, small moments of Nibbana. All right. So the challenge is how do we make it big? Okay. Oh, I've got to hurry up. I've got a few more minutes. Here and now, Nibbana Sachikiriya. So Nibbana is here now. So I think I'm going to skip this Nibbana thing. I'm going to go to the last one. Mind free of worldly conditions, free from sorrow, free of subtle defilements, and then blissful mind. So all these four, actually, they can all be summed up together. But let's look through very quickly. Mind free of worldly conditions, mind free from sorrow, undefiled, and blissful. Again, there's so much we can discuss, we can put into practice about what these 8 worldly conditions are all about. So best is, again, to go back to the Buddha's own words, as he explained in the Loka Vipatti Sutta. This is in the book of 8, where he says, monks, these 8 worldly conditions spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8 worldly conditions. Okay? So again, I'm just going to leave you with these words: gain and loss, fame and ill fame, praise and blame, happiness and sorrow. Okay? So in the Loka Vipatti Sutta, the Buddha says, every sentient being, every human being experience this, including the Buddha, including the Arahants. But what is the difference? What's the difference between what an Arahant or the Buddha experience and what we experience? Right? The difference is, as mentioned in this discourse, is, I think you all know, is equanimity, upeka. All right? When gain arises, when loss arises, to an Arahant, he sees this as gain, he sees this as loss. He doesn't cling to gain. he is not repulsed by loss. When fame arises, he doesn't cling to fame. He doesn't get put off by ill fame. He practices equanimity, and so on. So in that discourse, right, to summarize it, it says what we should cultivate in the face of the 8 worldly conditions will be equanimity. All right. So those of you who do the Brahma Viharas meditation, you can always practice upeka. Sorrowless, the word is asokang. Now, I'm just going to leave you the phrase here when the Buddha mentioned in the Dhammapada, him I call a Brahmana who in this world has transcended both good and evil, who is sorrowless and been free from the taints of moral defilements. He is pure. If you recall in the last week, I mentioned that one of the blessings is to avoid evil, to do good, and to purify the mind. So if you do good, which is good, but that's not good enough. You avoid evil, that is also good, but again, that is not good enough. You have to transcend both good and evil. You have to purify the mind. So when one's mind is purified, when one has gone beyond karma, because doing good, you create good karma. Avoiding evil, you also create good karma. But as long as there's karma, there will still be birth. So how do we get rid of birth? How do we end birth? So in the teachings, it talks about one goes beyond good and evil. Again, there's a full discourse, an entire discourse the Buddha talks about how this is practiced. The name of the discourse, if you're interested, is called the Kukura Vatika Sutta. Kukura Vatika Sutta. All right. So if you read that sutta, then it tells you the importance of going beyond good and evil. But again, we don't have time at this session to talk about it. So in place of the struggle between good and evil, Buddhism emphasizes ignorance and enlightenment. Okay, undefiled, talking about defilements, all right. Again, this is a topic for another Dhamma talk, all right. If you read the discourse on the Sabha Sutta, all right, then you will understand that in our mind, our defilements are of 3 levels. You have the gross defilements, the subtle defilements, and the dominant defilements. For gross defilements, yes, we can use the 5 precepts to help us to overcome them. But the subtle defilements, we need samadhi. We need, for example, samatha meditation to help us. But ultimately, for us to pull out the roots, the mula, the roots of the 3 roots of greed, hatred, and delusion, we need vipassana meditation. That is why the Buddha has got talks about a combination of samatha and vipassana. All right. So this has got a lot to do with the 3 levels of defilements. And then secure, the word is kemang. All right. In the Dhammapada verses, where it says that the most secure is actually the refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So that's the best refuge. Sometimes people say, oh, I'm a Buddhist, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. But the moment a misfortune happens, they will start running to all sorts of deities and angkong, or mediums, or some other spiritual teachers, psychic healers, and they forget the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. All right? Why? Because the faith, the saddha in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha is not strong. And they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. The moment they understand the Four Noble Truths, they understand in other words, they really internalize the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha in their practice. Then they will always take true refuge. Okay, so that's the meaning of kema. Okay, so I think it's already 10:15, and I should end and leave you some time for questions. And I think it is good for us to end with a prayer. I think this is like a daily prayer. This is something which His Holiness the Dalai Lama encouraged all his students, his friends, everybody to practice. And I think it is a very, very good practice for us when we wake up, before we go to bed, for us to have this reflection. So let us all reflect. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings always be joyful. And may all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So thank you very much. If you have been with me for the past 3 sessions, I really appreciate your patience and determination. Whatever has been useful, please take it with you and put it into practice. Whatever has not been useful, please leave it behind. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brother Benny, for that very informative sharing session. So right now, we do have questions from on the floor right now. But also, thank you to him for doing my job. Yep. And then, yeah, we do have a few questions here. Mainly from Facebook and some from YouTube. So the first question is from Hai Eng Yu on the FB, Bob's Facebook. Did Buddha speak specifically against the evils of gambling?
I can't hear that the question. Could you?
Okay. Did the Buddha speak specifically against the evils of gambling?
Gambling. Oh, okay. Did the well, it's not mentioned in the 5th precept, yeah, but it's mentioned in the Sigalovada Sutta. It's mentioned in the Parabhava Sutta. In the Parabhava Sutta, the Buddha talks about gambling as one of the causes of downfall. Right? Why? Because gambling has got this tendency, just like drinking, that tendency for one to be addicted. So the addiction. All right. So because of that, the Buddha says that is a cause of downfall. You know, there's a parallel, the Maṅgala Sutta, which we have just concluded, talks about blessings, right? 38 blessings. So what are the conditions for blessings? The conditions for success. So likewise, there's a conditions for failure, conditions for one's downfall. And that condition, and one of the conditions mentioned in this discourse called Parabhava Sutta, which is also in the Sutta Nipata. So that itself is mentioned there. And of course, in the Sigalovada Sutta, in the Dikha Nikaya, Sutta 31. So the Buddha also talks about gambling as one of the evils of gambling. Okay?
Okay, so we have another question here from CF Fong, also from Facebook. The question is, it is said that we should be thankful for a roof over our head, for having a job, for being able to wake up today, etc. etc. List goes on. So typical lay person's understanding of thankfulness points to being thankful to another. Is this the Buddhism understanding of thankfulness?
I think this we can look at this in 2 ways. You know, we can be thankful of the requisites that we are able to get, probably because we have done good, we have done meritorious actions in the past. The Buddha says that to be able to enjoy the fruits today, to have a good life today, is because we have done meritorious actions in the past. So we are thankful for that. Likewise, we can also be thankful for ourselves that we are able to come in contact to the Dhamma, to contact with the Dhamma. So we are also thankful that we have this store of merits that allows us to be able to appreciate the Dhamma. Right? So I think it works both ways. We are thankful of the requisites, thankful for other people who are able to help us, our good friends. Likewise, we are also thankful that we have that opportunity to practice the Dhamma. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brother Benny. So we have another question from John on YouTube. So it says here, can you speak about the practice of this sutta when dealing with people who do not follow the Dhamma?
People who do not follow the Dhamma, is it?
Yep.
Could you speak of the practice? Which sutta is about people who do not follow the Dhamma?
Can you speak about the practice of this sutta?
I'm trying to understand the question. I think people who don't follow. Well, people who don't follow the Dhamma, I think it's no specific suttas. There are many suttas. If a person doesn't follow the Dhamma, then one doesn't reap the benefits of listening to the Dhamma, of the benefits of practicing the Dhamma. And what are the benefits of practicing the Dhamma? I think the benefits of practicing the Dhamma is that one leads a much more happy life. One gets all those blessings that is mentioned in the Maṅgala Sutta. All right. So there are many discourses the Buddha talks about dealing with people who do not follow the Dhamma. Buddha says there are 4 types of people. All right, isn't it? The one that leads from darkness to darkness, one that leads from darkness to light, ones that lead from light to darkness, and one that leads people from light to light. Okay, so the Buddha, the enlightened beings, the spiritual masters, they are people who lead one from light to light. Okay, they have seen the light, right? And so they lead you to see the light. If you mix with wrong people, wrong friends, foolish people, all right, then they may actually lead you from darkness to darkness. And likewise, if you are someone who have studied the Dhamma, you realize the benefits of the Dhamma, you have seen the light of the Dhamma, so you can lead someone from light to light also. Okay, so there are different types of people who do not follow the Dhamma. If they do not follow the Dhamma, then they miss out on the benefits of the Dhamma. Right? I think that's much I can say. Yeah.
All right. So we have another one question here, which is I missed out on the name. I missed out the name of the reference for transgressing beyond good and evil. Could you repeat? Sorry.
Well, the name of the discourse is called Kukura Vatika Sutta. Kukura. Okay. Let me see how do you spell that. Kukura. K-U-K, Kukura Vatika. K-U-K-U, Kuku. R-A-V-A-T-I-K-K-A. Kukura Vatika Sutta. Right?
Okay, so we have another question from Simon Lee on Facebook. How do we practice mudita?
Okay, well, mudita is joy, right? Joy. So in the Brahma Viharas, so many of us practice loving kindness. We practice compassion. We practice mudita. So mudita is an upeka, right? Okay. So it is said that one practices mudita, joyful. One is joyful of others' good fortune. When we see other people's success, when we see the success of others, right? When we see that other people are successful, we should always give people a benefit of a doubt. Right? Don't cast aspersions and say, "Oh, he's so." If you see someone, buying a brand new car, if you see your neighbor suddenly buying a brand new car, be happy for him and say, "Oh, he must have done well," rather than have a thought which says, "Oh, not sure whether this is drug money or is it dirty money." So don't have negative thoughts in your mind. Give people the benefit of a doubt. All right, or say, or if you see, many people like to have this impression that if you're a policeman and if you're a wealthy policeman, you must be corrupted. Well, he could be, but he may not necessarily be. So why must we always have that conclusion that just because he's in an enforcement agency, if he's wealthy, that it must be because of corruption? So if we continuously think like that, then in our mind, then we are definitely not following the Dhamma. Then we will have a lot of negative thoughts in our mind. So mudita is when we give people that benefit. All right. If indeed his wealth is gotten through ill-gotten gains, not through righteous means, he will reap the karma of his negative actions. We don't have to worry about that. He will reap that. If you truly understand the law of karma, he will reap the unwholesome actions that he has accumulated. Okay. Now, sometimes it is not possible to always have joyful action, right? That is why the 4 Brahma Viharas, the 4 sublime states, they should be practiced together. We start the day, for example, with a thought of loving kindness. Then we manifest it in compassion. We try to help someone. We have thoughts of loving kindness. All right? You know the difference, right? Loving kindness is just the wish that all beings are well and happy. Compassion is wishing that the cause of suffering of other beings are being overcome. So with compassion, we try to alleviate their suffering. We do our best, okay? Maybe, we provide some food to the old folks' home, and then we find that, people, they appreciate, they benefit from that. Or we give some money to help the frontliners, right? But so as a result, when we see that people are benefiting from it, we rejoice. That's mudita. But despite all our good actions, and we find that, we gave our support to the frontliners, and the next day we heard that, this frontliner has passed away from COVID. Okay, do we rejoice? Of course, we don't rejoice. So, do we feel sad? Yeah, you can feel sad, but we can have a feeling of upeka, because you have done your level best. You have done your best to help this person, but he passed away. But you couldn't help him anymore. Crying, you could cry, right? But feeling sad is not going to help. So the Buddhist approach is to have a feeling of upeka. Why? Because when you develop upeka, then your mind is balanced. Then it allows you then to start the process of being compassionate again, of loving kindness again. So whoever that we can benefit, and we know that they have benefited from it, they may even say thank you to us, we rejoice. All right? Some people, we try our level best. Like for example, you read about tsunami, isn't it? Right? You try to help. Maybe you don't personally help, but you give money, you give food, you give clothing. But at the end, you hear that people still die. So the only way you can do is to have equanimity, because when you go on the topic of equanimity, that doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean don't care. Equanimity has a much bigger topic than just thinking that, equanimity, I don't care. It's not that. Okay. So mudita has to be looked at in the context of the 4 Brahma Viharas. They are not independent in itself. And the 8 worldly conditions, which we touched on very briefly just now, which I hope you can read in the Loka Vipatti Sutta. So in that sutta, the Buddha talks about how do we practice equanimity. So equanimity is also mentioned in detail. So equanimity actually has an element of caring. Also. It's all part of what is called the 4 sublime states. Okay?
All right, we have another question here from Brother Baksu. What is the name of the sutta to go beyond karma?
Well, I think that was the same question asked. It's called the Kukura Vatika Sutta.
Okay.
Kukura Vatika Sutta.
Okay, that's a long name.
It's a long name. Right? It's a very interesting sutta because it talks about the dog ascetic and the cow ascetic. I think some of you may have heard of that story. How this guy practiced. He says that if he practiced like a dog, then when he dies, maybe he goes to the heavens reserved for the dogs. If he practiced like a cow, he only eat grass. He like dog ascetic, he will eat using his tongue to take food, right? So some of these practices, interestingly, are still in existence, in India, in some of the remote parts of India. Right? So it's a very interesting discourse. So the Buddha was using that to explain that, no, he said, I'm sorry, if you do that, that's a wrong view. So eventually, the ultimate is you have to go beyond good, go beyond evil. When you do good, you get good karma. You do bad, you get bad karma. You do good and bad, you get good and bad karma. When you do neither good nor bad karma, that's where you get neither good. That's where you are able to transcend karma. So that is the gist of this discourse called the Kukura Patika Sutta. All right.
Okay, so that's another comment from Facebook as well in response to feeling mudita, neighbor buying a new car. Good answer, but difficult to adopt. We usually are very jealous when other people are doing well or get promoted ahead of you.
Sure. That is why it said Buddhist practice requires time, isn't it? It's a gradual practice. That's why the Buddha talks about the Dhamma as a gradual practice. So how do we know that, for example, that we are progressing in our practice? There are three broad categories called greed, hatred, and delusion. Maybe delusion a bit more difficult, but greed and hatred. if we have been practicing the Dharma, we have been going for meditation retreats, year in, year out, or month in, month out. But the moment we talk to someone and someone says something that we don't like to hear, immediately we get angry, we get upset. So that means the effects of all the study of the Dharma, the practice of the Dharma, all our meditation retreats, that thing has not actually manifested productively. All right. So that's why I always remember His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He says, yes, meditation, contemplation, these are very good, very, very good. But even more important, how do we bring this out in our everyday life? How do we actually apply this? Remember just now there was this that discussed the parable of the saw, which I mentioned just now. In that discourse, the Buddha talks about how when everything is in your favor, the conditions are so good that you do not need to get angry, isn't it? I always used to tell myself, if I'm attending a Buddhist camp, if I'm attending a retreat, if I'm observing 8 precepts, I have literally no condition whatsoever to get angry or to get upset, right? Because the moment it's time for lunch, you just sit there. The food is all done. You don't even need to wash your plates. Everything is so conducive. You are seated in a hall where you don't have noise. Everything is quiet. Everybody is so nice to you. The one who's next to you say good things to you. They see you, they say sadhu, 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 sadhu. Everybody is so nice. How to get angry? That's not real, isn't it? But when you're out in the real life, how do you translate what we have studied, what we have learned in our retreat, in our meditation, in our everyday life? Then we will know. So that is why. That is why in the parable of the saw, right? The Buddha talks about it. Remember the name of the sutta? Right?
All right. Thanks, Brother Benny, for that very good answer. Unfortunately, we are running very short of time, and we are supposed to move on to the sharing of merits shortly after. But I have one more question here. I think this would resonate actually with a lot of young people. I was thinking of this when he was giving the talk, and it is, how do we actually deal with the thought of like instant gratification, and then how do we balance that with patience? Yeah. Because especially during times where you look at your peers, they are like above you, and then people treat them with a lot more respect. They give them a easier time, and then when it's your turn, they give you a really hard time. And then how do you actually deal with it?
Yeah. Well, my simple answer to it is, number one, you just have to wait your time. All right, you just got to be patient. Number two, if you find that the environment is very toxic, then you should move on. All right, then you find that the environment is very toxic and people get promoted because of connections, not through hard work. And you see not one case, you see 2 cases, you see 3 cases because of connections. People curry favor, and there's nepotism. So then you should tell yourself, no, this is not the organization that I want to be in. All right. It's not that I want instant gratification, but I want to work in an environment where I have the opportunity to develop my potential. So you have to decide, you have to find out for yourself whether this organization that you work for, does it provide you that opportunity? Number one, look at the corporate philosophy of the organization. But again, the organization may have a beautiful corporate philosophy, but the leaders there, they don't practice that. So if you can tolerate it, and sometimes you through sheer persistence, then there's this competency called tenacity, right? So if you have that tenacity, that tenaciousness, that you could sustain it, see how long, it's a test of your tenacity. All right. Then, but after a while, you have to realize that, look, this is not the organization. Then you leave. Now, when you leave, you do not leave with ill will. You leave with understanding. You see, you live with understanding that yes, there are organizations in society. All right. It's unfortunate that maybe I don't have enough store of merits in the past. I landed up in this. Then I'll move on. I will give myself another opportunity. So you move on with an open heart, no hard feelings, right? And I can tell you, even from a non-religious point of view, it's okay if you want to move on to organization, but never burn the bridges. Never burn bridges. Never burn bridges. Because the next organization that you join, you may find that it's worse than what you experienced. All right. Then you say, hey, my previous organization was so much better. And I've also seen people who actually move back to the previous organizations, because after that, the leaders in the previous organization realized that, hey, you know, we have got a good staff. We forgot about him, so we bring him back. So there are a lot of variables in society. Right? That's a topic for another session. Okay.
All right, sure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brother Benny.
Thank you.
So right now we have to move on to the sharing of merits. But once again, thank you for all your questions, for sending them in. Unfortunately, we do not have time to cover all of them today. Let's move on to sharing of merits.
Brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, we have done a lot of wholesome action this morning through our chanting and also listening to the Dhamma by Brother Benny. So it's good that we dedicate and share the merits that we have accumulated. So I now kindly invite everyone to put your hands in Anjali and let us recite together. Idame nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang no nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang wo nyatinang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Eta wata cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Idame punyang asawakaya wahang hotu. Idame punyang Nibana sapacayo hotu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.